now it's time to talk about printing our styrofoam block. So you can see my lobster design that's in there. I've got all of those recessed areas in the design. So the first way I'm going to talk about printing them is using washable markers. My personal favorite brand is Crayola. They are not paying me to endorse them, but they're my favorite. All right. So let's start off with a lobster is red. Oh, that's not red. That's pink. I guess that might be kind of cool, actually. Thought I was getting the red one out. Okay. So if a lobster is kind of red to begin with, I'm going to color this guy red. What am I going to name my lobster? The obvious thing would be to have some alliteration, like an L name to go with it. Let's see, what else? Where does my red go? It does not go there, so we go here. What else could I call it? Lobsters swim in the ocean, so it could be like, I don't know. I have to think about that. Titles for artwork are important. It helps the viewer know what you're trying to portray, or perhaps we just call it lobster. It doesn't have to be complicated, right? Okay, so I've now colored all this with my red marker. If I want a background for it, how about blue? Kind of go with the oceanic type thing. So I will put the blue where I didn't put the red. The other thing that's kind of nice here is that red and blue are analogous colors on the color wheel. Of course, now that I'm coloring this, it's looking a little bit more like an American lobster. Red, white, and blue. All right, I have to be careful not to put fingerprints on here because if I get fingerprints on it, that will print. You can see here at these edges where it's a little bit smudgy. So that's from my finger. I'm gonna fill that back in before I print it. Okay, I set that aside, a sheet of watercolor paper here. And I'm going to take a piece of a wet paper towel and I'm just gonna pat on here because I want this paper to be pretty evenly damp. All right, I think I'll wipe it a little bit just to make sure that the whole thing's damp because the water on the paper is what's gonna pull the ink off your print block. So handle it by the edges. I'm gonna line it up with a corner. I'm gonna press it down and you don't wanna smudge it around or your image will get smeared. So you can kind of walk your fingers over the surface or hold it carefully and sort of rub over it. Basically, you want to make sure that all of the surfaces are touching paper to transfer the ink. And the moment of truth. Ta-da! There is my lobster print. Now I'm going to go rinse this off and we will try something different. This time, let's try a little more traditional approach with one single color. In this case, I'm going to use black and white. For this printing option, we're going to use a little more abstract approach with multiple colors. So try to choose ones that are going to look good if they mix together. Otherwise, you'll end up with a muddy brown. But in this case, I've got blues and greens, inspired by the ocean since this is a lobster. for this last example, I want to show you a more traditional way to create a print, and that's with a brayer. A brayer is a hard rubber roller so that it's going to run evenly over the surface. It's not like the ones you paint your walls with, because those spongy type ones would push paint or ink down into your cracks, and you don't want that. The other thing that's different about this brayer is that it has an offset handle, so when you set it down, your handle's not hanging out in the ink or the paint. So let me pull this over here. I have this ink plate. It hooks on the table, and you can use black ink, or in this particular instance, I am going to use black acrylic paint, and it's not cooperating with me. My brayer is not rolling in circles, so it's not getting coated with paint evenly. See if I can get it to go. There, we got it. Try again. Aha. There we are, and you hear that little sticky sound? That's how you know there's enough on there. Okay, so now let me get rid of this mess. And you always want to cover your work surface so that you have it nice and clean. And I'm going to roll this right, get a little more, roll it right on top of my print block until I have a nice even coat. All right, and you can see that because the brayer is hard, it's not squishing anything down into the indentations. Okay, now I'm going to move this because it's dirty and I don't want that on my finished print. All right, so I'm going to just put this right up here, the top corner, turn it over, line it up and lay it down. This is called burnishing. Go right over top of it. I'm transferring that paint to the surface of the paper. Notice that I did not have to wet it because the paint is already wet, so the paper will absorb that. And here we go. Whoop, that's a little bit of a rough print because it was the very first one that I did. But if I put paint on this again and printed another one, it would turn out a little better. But you get the idea of how that process works. All right, here you can see the 4 versions of my lobster styrofoam print. I think my favorite is actually the marker black one, although I did reprint on top of here, and that turned out a little bit better there. Probably my least favorite is this one. It's just a little bit, the color's a little too much all over the place. I'd like to try one with a red lobster and then this kind of marking as the background, so it's almost like water. So the great news is I still have this print block and I can print it many more times.